All right, let's get right into it. What we're talking about here is one of the biggest diplomatic meltdowns in recent memory. I mean, this was a moment that didn't just stir up a political storm, it shook the very foundation of global cooperation. This is the story of the G20's Great Divorce. So picture this. It's late 2025. What was supposed to be a simple, symbolic passing of the torch for the world's most powerful economic club, well, it just fell apart. The ceremonial handover from one host station to the next literally didn't happen. It was a first, and it left a lot of very important people completely stunned. And this is how nasty it got. I mean, wow. This wasn't some quiet disagreement behind closed doors. This was a full-on public jab from the White House press secretary. So the big question is, how on earth did a meeting of global partners get here? To really get the explosion, we first need to understand the machine itself. So what even is this group that's at the center of this whole firestorm? You know, the G20 isn't some formal world government. It's really more like a neighborhood watch for the global economy, something that was born out of the financial chaos of the late 90s. But make no mistake, the economic muscle here is just immense. We're not just talking about a random collection of countries. This is the engine room of the entire global economy. These members control a staggering 85% of the world's wealth. When they agree on something, the whole world moves. When they don't, well, you get some serious turbulence. So the G20's work basically happens on two main tracks. First up, you've got the finance track. The best way to think about these folks is as the accountants. They're the finance ministers, the central bankers, and they're the ones who get into the real nitty-gritty of global money. You know, debt, taxes, banking rules. It's the technical stuff that everything else is built on. And the second track is the Sherpa track. And honestly, the name is perfect. Just like the Himalayan guides who map out the entire route for climbers, these are the top diplomats who spend the entire year negotiating, arguing, and paving the way for their leaders. They're basically the wedding planners for the main event, and they spend months fighting over every little detail. Okay, and this is maybe the most important thing to understand. The G20's biggest secret? It's basically a club with almost no formal rules. There's no headquarters, no permanent staff, zero legal power to enforce anything. Its entire power comes from a gentleman's agreement and, well, peer pressure. Every single decision requires 100% agreement. And that right there is the critical weakness that was about to get blown wide open. So, keeping that weakness in mind, let's get back to the main event. We're in 2025 again, and the US decides it's going to boycott the summit hosted by South Africa. Now, this wasn't just about skipping a meeting. No. This was a deliberate, high-stakes, and very public snub. At the very heart of all this was a complete clash of philosophies. South Africa, as the host, wanted to focus on things like climate justice and equality, especially for the global South. The U.S. White House, on the other hand, just brushed this off as an ideological preoccupation, basically a distraction from what it saw as the G20's real job, business and growth. And here's how it all went down, step by step. First, the U.S. boycotts the summit and sends a junior diplomat instead. Then, in response, South Africa's president refuses to do the traditional gavel handover to someone who wasn't a head of state. That led to the entire public ceremony, a huge tradition, just being canceled. The presidency was eventually handed over quietly behind closed doors at some government office. It was the diplomatic equivalent of just leaving the keys under the doormat. But you know, the drama didn't just end with that quiet, awkward snub. Oh no. It exploded into a really aggressive public relations war. And it was a war waged almost entirely by the White House. The U.S. response was just shockingly harsh. They went public, accusing South Africa of spreading fake news. They claimed the host nation had weaponized its presidency. And then came this incredible line about how the U.S. would restore legitimacy to the G20, basically calling the 2025 summit illegitimate. And the final shot? A threat to not even invite South Africa to the next summit. So, you might be wondering, why does any of this high-level drama actually matter to us? Well, because when the G20 is working, they're the ones coordinating on things that affect us all, like global tax rates or preventing a financial meltdown. When they don't work, it can impact everything from the price of gas to our ability to tackle climate change. When that neighborhood watch starts fighting amongst itself, everybody's house is a little less safe. What this whole mess really did was expose a deep, fundamental crack in what the world's most powerful countries even think the G20 should be doing. It's really a story of two totally competing visions for what the future of global cooperation should look like. And this table just lays it all out clear as day. On one side, you have South Africa's vision, a theme of solidarity and equality, inviting leaders from the African Union, with a philosophy that says, hey, everyone gets a seat at the table. But then on the other side, you've got the planned U.S. summit, a theme of growth and energy, inviting new partners like Poland, with a philosophy that feels a lot more like a closed-off club of friends. So all of this leaves us with a really big, really important question. This wasn't just some political disagreement. It was a fundamental fight over what global cooperation even means. So, as the dust settles, you have to ask, is the G20 still a global watchdog if its most powerful member is trying to rewrite the guest list?